Perfect.
All right, Rick, if you want to kick us off, I think we are ready to go.
Love to. So hello, everybody. Let me get started by getting into character here. If you can see.
I'm leaving the meeting.
So welcome, everybody. Let me share my screen with you. We have some special guests.
Isso ela mandou. Sim, estava muito bem. Estava espetacular, estava.
You see that, Emily? Good. So let me move these people over here. So thank you for joining our call today. I know we moved it up a little bit, and it actually looks like it's a great time for everybody being here at noon in Michigan time. But want to say thank you to Tony Smith, Rui, Nuria, Pepe Raventós for joining us on this call as we talk about the wines of Spain and Portugal. I'm going to take you just on some notes for the group, and then I'm going to kind of turn it over to our guest speakers to talk about their particular wineries, if I may. So let's start with Spain. So great map here from Wine Folly. As you can see, what I love about these maps too is they not only show the region, they also show the main grapes that are grown in that region. So if you look north, Tempranillo and Rioja, Grenache and Viura for white. Over to the east, Catalunya, great producer of Cava, Grenache, Syrah. The town of Priorat is there. You have sherry down south in Andalusia, Pedro Jimenez. So I gotta get these people, I can't read this without moving everybody around. So let me go like this. So some classifications. So Spain has 69 officially recognized wine regions across 17 provinces, including Balearic and Canary Islands, classified as DO and DOC. Both denote they meet the strict government requirements to produce wine. DOC designations being the highest quality. Currently, 2 regions meet that requirement in Spain, Rioja and Priorat. 500 grape varietals in Spain. Yes, 400 grape varietals in Spain. Tempranillo, Garnacha, Albarino, the white grape Aran, Paradella, Xarello. Like I said, Aran being the most planted grape, white grape. Second is Tempranillo, and then Grenache or Garnacha out of Priorat. So Cava, everyone knows that Cava is the Spanish equivalent to sparkling wine, which is produced in Catalonia. Rioja, been making wine for nearly 1,000 years, dating back to 1092. Spain is the #1 producer of organic wine. Almost 200,000 acres or 80 hectares of land is specifically planted organic. And then sherry. So behind me, I actually brought a bottle of Donzuelo Manzanilla. Thank you, Ernie, for your great presentation on sherry. I also have a 15-year-old Solera from Dry Sack, a beautiful Pando. I'm not drinking all these, by the way. So let's move on. So let me introduce you to Nuria. And Nuria, if you would just give us your background, what you're up to, what's going on these days with you. So welcome.
Thank you. Hola, Pepe. So my name is Nuria Garrote y Esteve, and I own Vino V & Company. We import wines from Spain and now also southern France. And nowadays, we've been home for almost 5 weeks, trying to stay healthy and safe. And my my philosophy of uniting nature and humanity, it makes more sense today more than ever. So I understand wine as liquid geography, but always through the point of view of a person. And what we do is we follow people that we respect and that we become to admire. And Pepe is a great example for that. So importing wines that are made by people with highly commitment to nature, to viticulture, and the importance of those practices. And Pepe is our special guest today, and I'm very thankful for seeing him. I have to say, it feels really good to see French faces. We need them more than ever. So thank you for inviting me to this Spain and Portugal. Thank you to Woodberry to understand that we bring pioneer work from people in Spain, and I'm thankful to be invited to this class today.
Thank you, Neria. This is Pepe Raventós. So Pepe, how are you? I think you're muted right now, Pepe. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Well, first of all, thanks everybody, and don't believe what Nuria says about me, because it's far too generous. She's a great friend, such as Eli, that I am happy to see you here in the screen as well. And yeah, this is something also I want to warn everybody. I am a disaster in many things, and being technology the first one. So I will try to do my best with a Zoom today, but please be patient with me. And very briefly, what is right, and Nuria is very accurate, is that our philosophy is very simple. I inherited a vine farm that has belonged to my family for more than 500 years. So we represent the 21st generation, trying to take it to the 22nd, if this virus allows us. And this property became famous in 1872 when my great-great-great-grandfather made the first Spanish champagne using method champenoise with the grape Xarel·lo. We continue very passionate to work this property, and with a very simple philosophy. For us in wine, the future is the past, and my whole responsibility is try to recuperate all the work that has been done in this property before the era of confusion. I call era of confusion the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when we abused too much of nature. So we will go further into this later. Thank you.
So Pepe, there's a couple of slides here. I don't know if you've seen this yet. If you want to talk to this.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. So this first slide is a drawing of the property. So one of the things that are making Raventós a world's small sparkling reference is that maybe it's one of the unique farms which are committed to make organic and biodynamic sparkling wine from that closed ecosystem. So here you can see on the top left, you can see a drawing where this says the cellar. We live just above that, so the family is back living in the property. The lake on the top, on the bottom right. On the center of the image, the wood that is on the top of the hill that defines the different orientations, and it has important effects on microclimate to our property, and different plots painted. If you want to be precise, in the very center of the image, you can see a horse plowing, and just as a message to share with everybody, we are pioneers in horse traction in Spain, with our own horses working the property, not just for the marketing picture, but simply because when my father was little, 8 horses did all the property, and I am so passionate to be able to recuperate that philosophy, such as an example of bringing the rhythm of nature and the respect to the vines, and especially in the old parcels where the old plants live on the slopes, back into the farm. Also, another very important message of this slide is this idea of biosynergies. For me, we have to interpret the eco and biodynamic and take it to our own small origin. and use common sense in farming, no? Not just use the recipe again for marketing purposes. So I call biosynergies is a step forward of biodynamics, where really the farm organism is what takes the protagonism, and really this idea of animal, man, and plant in a closed ecosystem, trying to be the most independent and the most unique and authentic. No? Let me finish this one by saying not forgot, but I kind of like lost the interest in the perfect wine search in the early 2000s. And I was lucky to make wines with Didier Daguenot in Saint-Andelaine in 2004, with Didier's father and Benjamin's son, that were still very good friends. And that was an inspiration to really search for soil and authenticity. And so the idea of perfect wine is not what interests me, is the idea of authentic wine, what I try to pursue in our daily job.
Awesome. There's a couple of more slides here too from your property.
This is Francois. We have a beautiful Breton horse. We have also a horse from the Jura that, by the way, apart from wonderful wines and delicious Comté cheese, they have one of the best breeds of work horses, very precise. Awesome. This one is bigger and it's for more strenuous effort, like the one you see here. We are planting seeds in the middle of 80-year-old vines of Xarel·lo in a north-faced vineyard called Clos del Serral.
Awesome. Great picture. Same.
That's the same day here. And
who's this guy?
Sorry about the guy, but look at the vineyards. That's what is interesting. Look at those plants. This is a property that we found in 2017 that was abandoned because of the difficult times of the 2008, 2010 in Spain. It's called Can Sumoy, and it's a farm. It's a 1,000-acre farm, imagine, at 600 meters, so 1,200 feet altitude, in the more poor area of Penedès. It's the Priorat, and you mentioned before, Rick, about Priorat, is the Priorat of Penedès. And we could convince the banks to buy this property, help us buy this property, and we've been working to recuperate. This is 60-year-old plants of Parellada. Because of the attitude, we can have very low pH wines, and thus we can make zero intervention or natural wines from Can Sumoy. It's a very, very special place.
Very cool. I think you can see it in this picture as well.
Exactly, with the abandoned buildings that when we can, I want to refurbish in recuperating the cellar that was abandoned. Is on the right of the image. You can see these three together pieces. One is the grape reception. The other, I want to build an amphora cellar in the back. Have a family back living in the property with the animals back into the property. Bring the life back to the Can Sumoy farm.
Awesome.
And grapes are planted. What grapes are planted there?
So the grapes that are planted in Can Sumoy are Montònega, which is the name that Parellada in attitude is received. I don't know if you're familiar with Parellada. It's one of the three main whites in Penedès. Xarel·lo, being the king of the white grapes in Penedès, lower yields, thick skin, very resistant to pressure. And Sumoll. Sumoll is a red grape very traditional from the area that was a little bit put away in the era of confusion, that we also brought a lot of Cabernets and stuff into the area. Sumoll, kind of similar to the Nebbiolo. And in Raventós is the main whites, Xarel·lo, Parellada, Macabeu, for the sparkling wine. I wanted to point out a message, Rick, that I thought it was very interesting when you put that slide and you shared with everybody that Spain has the highest surface planted of eco, no? of organic. And this is a message I want to share with everybody. And I am very happy to share presentation with my dear friends from Portugal that were much smarter than the Catalans and could get rid of the Madrid government a long, long time ago. But it's not politics day today. I think we need to go to basics and look at a plant in a very natural way. And I see a vine like an olive tree or an almond tree. it naturally belongs to the climate that we have in Peninsula in Peninsula Iberica, meaning that it's one of the best places in the world to make wines without intervention or with minimal intervention, either from the vineyard to the cellar. For some reason, we have been very bad at marketing, and the French have taken the prestige, and this is great for France, and I have a lot of respect for it. The same with many other northern latitudes. No? Even now in the south of England, they claim that they have the best climate for viticulture. But a vine with 400 liters of rain well spread has an amazing vegetative cycle. And here we have 500 liters, for example. So while there is a climate crisis, we need to be more common sensed in wine and bear in mind that the Mediterranean and the Iberian climate is very, very adequate for making organic grapes. Let me finish. What are the biggest pressures or challenges that the vintner has? All those that are linked to humidity, because the fungi are the ones that attack the plant and that oblige us to treat the vineyards with copper and with sulfur. So when the eco movement arrives, says, hey, don't put so much copper or sulfur in the vineyards. And then biodynamic say even less, and natural even less, if you will. No? So I'm simplifying a lot the message, but bear with me for a second. The drier the climate is, the better to make organic and biodynamic grapes and non-intervention. So we really need to gain confidence in this idea of the vine, like an olive tree, like an almond tree, this Iberian climate, and really gain strength in the potential of quality that we can offer to the world, even at a better value, because we have not been so famous in the past. I hope I make some sense here.
Yes, you did. Absolutely. So thank you, Pepe.
Thank you very much.
So let's switch gears and talk about Portugal. So thank you to those who joined us for our happy hour last Friday when we talked about Vinho Verde. As you can see on the map, Vinho Verde is the northernmost region on the map. I also was digging in my cellar and I was able to find a Muscatel de Setúbal. This is a 2010. I also found a nice 2004, and if you can see the color on that, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So a great dessert wine that'll age a long time. So let's get into it with Portugal. So there is more to Portugal or Portuguese wine than just port, as you know. Port wine was born and exclusively produced in the Douro region. I know Tony's going to talk about that in a minute. Douro is the oldest demarcated wine region in the world and is declared a World Heritage by UNESCO. So for those on the call that aren't familiar with that, in the US, things like the Grand Canyon or the Redwood Forest, those are also declared World Heritage by UNESCO. So most grape varietals for wine grown in Portugal are native. So things like Trigo Franca, Trigo Nacional, Tinta Ruiz, or Tempranillo, Albarino in Spain. So some really cool grapes that they're growing over there. Vinho Verde, as you know, is a wine region, not a grape varietal. It is the white that is most likely the one that we've heard of, known for its yellow-green tint, light, crisp, refreshing, low in alcohol. Portugal is also the 11th largest wine producer in the world. Quinta on the label means wine estate, so something like a bodega in Spain or chateau in France. And then tinto on the label literally translates to red wine in the bottle. So here is Tony. So hi, Tony. Welcome.
Whoa.
Thank you.
How you doing, guys?
Great.
Hello, Michigan. So, yeah, my name is Tony Smith, and I'm actually a Brit, but I've been living in Portugal for many, many years. And since 2011, with my business partner, Marcelo Lima, who is a Brazilian, we started to invest here in the Douro Valley. And we're speaking to you today from Quinta de Covela, which was our first quinta, which we bought in 2011, and it was in pretty bad disrepair. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of love and affection on bringing it back to what we think is a really, really beautiful standard. And while I've actually got the laptop here, we're at one of the higher points of the Quinta, so you could actually see where we are. And then down there is the Douro. So we're on, we farm at 4 different properties along the river, along the Douro River. 2 of them, which is Covella and Tormes, are in Vinho Verde. 2 of them are in the DOC Douro, that's Tecederas and Boa Vista. And we'll be going through the wines in a little while. We will take you through the wines. But I just wanted to give you an idea of, you know, where we are and what the difference is between these 2 different regions. I'm glad, Rick, you brought up the idea of Vinho Verde not being a wine style or a grape. A lot of people still think that. And, you know, the whole idea of the marketing being cheap and cheerful, fresh, light, all of that is true, and it can be very, very delicious, but it can be much more than that. And so here we are at the southeasternmost corner of the Vinho Verde region, on the border to the Douro. So we're by the river around 6 kilometers, by road around 17 kilometers to the border, and it's pretty winding roads around here in the mountains. And so we are really at the furthest point away from the ocean in Vinho Verde. So it makes our wines here at Covella and at Tormes a little bit more full-bodied, you know, more structured. So on first tasting, maybe people don't identify them as Vinho Verde. And so this has always been my first battle to get people to understand that Vinho Verde can be much more than cheap and cheerful. So we'll be trying our Avesso in a little while. Covella is the home of Avesso. It's one of the more than 250 Portuguese native grapes that have been identified so far. And Avesso in Portuguese means averse. It means upside down, it means back to front, it means inside out, the wrong way around. And basically it's an awkward grape. It's a really awkward grape. There's been several attempts to transplant it from here, from this region around Covella, and it's never worked. Either it doesn't produce, or it doesn't take, or when if it does take, then it produces so little that people lose interest very quickly. But this is where it's from, and here is where it thrives. And so this is really what we've been trying to do for the last almost 10 years now, is try to push the idea of Portuguese native grapes. When we first came here, this estate was planted half Portuguese varieties and half international varieties. So we had, on the reds, we had Touriga Nacional, but we also had Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. And on the whites, we have Avesso and Arinto, but we also have Viognier, Chardonnay, and Gewürztraminer, of all things. And what we've been trying to do is really to try and raise the level of participation in our wines of Portuguese varieties, and also to raise the profile of these grapes in other markets. People get to know them. So that's really what we've seen as being our task in the last few years. In terms of where we are, so I said, we're further away from the ocean. We don't get any morning mist. We don't get sort of the Californian style, the San Francisco type weather. Here it tends to be a little warmer, less rainfall, not quite as sparse as the rainfall is further upriver towards Spain. But here for the Vinho Verde region, we get quite a low rainfall. So basically the wines that we make here, we try to be authentic, we farm organically. We haven't gone biodynamic like Pepe, but we believe that organic is the right way here, organic and modern. And we try to shift our organic production also to the other properties in the Douro. So in the Douro we have Tecederas, which is our good mid-range, I would say mid-range wines, and then Boa Vista, which is our flagship property. And we really determined at Boa Vista to make low quantity, limited edition wines made really with top quality. And to help us with that, we have the assistance of a really great guy. He's I would say almost a legend in the wine industry. He's Jean-Claude Berrouet, who was for 44 years the chief winemaker at Petrus. And he's a philosopher rather than a winemaker, and a bit of a poet. And he's the most natural nose that I've seen in terms of making blends in my life. So these are the 4 properties. It's Covella and, as you can see now on your screen, Covella and Tormes in the Vinho Verde. Then you see the dividing line, and then further upriver beyond Regua, going towards Spain. Boa Vista, which is on the right bank, and Tesadera is on the left bank.
Awesome. Beautiful. Let me introduce you to Rui as well. Rui, how are you?
Hello, boa tarde.
Hello.
So it's a nice experience talking to a machine and not to people. I hope that it doesn't get along for many more months like this. So I'm the winemaker in charge, and I've been working in Covella particularly since '91. It was my first working experience. And I was very happy that when Tony and Marcelo bought the property that they called us all back, and me included. So I'm here to explain you a little bit about our wines. And first is, one of the secrets is the soil in the Minho, and particularly at Covella, that it's a granitic soil, a quite sandy structure and very poor soil. That gives and explains also a little bit more why our wines, and particularly with the Avesso grape, have such a sharp and nice acidity. It's quite elegant wines, always on the dry side. And as Rick told us at the beginning, explaining a little bit about the Vinho Verde, that Tony continued, we have to see that Vinho Verde is a region, and in a particular region we can produce many different styles of wines. For instance, with our which is a blend of Avesso and Arinto, being Avesso the grape that doesn't travel at all, and Arinto being a grape that travels. And it's also quite plastic, a little bit like Chardonnay, because you can age it in oak, you can do nice sparklings with it, and you can plant it in cool climates, in dry climates, granite, schist, loam. So it is quite adapted to nearly everything. So this is a blend, I would say it's a modern style of Vinho Verde, a little fizz, low on alcohol, and a little bit off dry. And because it's past 5, and at Covella, when it's 5, we don't drink gin tonic, we drink a glass of Avesso. We do here a classic Vinho Verde, means being it's totally dry and without a fizz, so like a normal white wine. So salud to you all.
Salud.
Rick is tasting something else. Our red, okay. No burbujas, no sparkling. Ah. So particularly this Avesso is, that's the other one, the blended one. So Avesso is always a little bit flower on the white flowers, citrus, a little bit mineral, not very intense, but quite complex, and always dry. And for me, in terms of acidity, it's comparable like a very nice Riesling from the Rheingau. So it's always this sharp acidity that brings or lifts the wine in your palate and gives it an extra splash when you taste it. So it's ideal for starters and for many different types of foods, or like we at 5, just to have a nice glass of white. Why not? And as
we just received the 2019 vintage of the Vinho Verde, the Tormes too, and it's just starting to get out in the market, and it's just a beautiful wine. So congratulations, it turned out really well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Tormes is like the blend Avesso and Arinto, being Avesso the local variety of this particular part of the region. Arinto is more widely planted in the Vinho Verde. It's a little bit more expressive on the nose as the Covella Avesso, but lighter on the palate. So it's, for me, drinkable since 8 to 24, nearly a 24-hour white wine for you to taste and drink and enjoy. What we also do at Covella is with Touriga Nacional, a variety that's in Portugal we always been discussing, is it from the down, so center Portugal, or from the Douro? We do a dry rosé with it. And this is the vintage 19 that you guys will, I hope, receive as the virus has passed away. It's dry, floral. Touriga Nacionalis has always a floral nose, and also crisp acidity coming, of course, from this granitic soil. And you talked and very well about varieties. We have, like Spain, many varieties. One that is in common, it's Tinta Roriz, Tempranillo in Spain, or Tinto Fino, Tinto del País. In the Alentejo south is Aragonês. We have another one, and now we are moving to the Douro. Cedeiras, for instance, that it's widely spread as it's Touriga Franca, and Touriga Franca was called, so in the ancient books, Touriga Francesa, so it's the same variety. And this is actually a crossing, like Alicante Boucher, which is a crossing between Grenache and Petit Boucher. What we did with Touriga Franca, for the same reason, trying to survive phylloxera, is a crossing of Touriga Nacional, the famous red variety, and another one that is, or was in the past, well resistant to phylloxera, which is Morisco. So nowadays, nobody plants Morisco because it's a high yielding grape. But in the past, it was seen that it was quite resistant, and a local farmer, using the methods he studied in France, that's why we called it Touriga Francesa in the past, did this crossing and established Touriga Franca. So it's a very important variety, but a quite young variety. And then, of course, we've got the Tinta Barroca, for instance, which is nice for some soft tannins. Tinta Amarela gives a lot of structure. At Boa Vista, we've got a very old variety, Tinto Cão and Donzelinho Tinto. So it's a big puzzle in the Douro if you compare the blending from the Douro region and the Minho. And of course, in the Douro, we have a different soil that is schist. So this is one of the secrets of the Douro, is the schist compared to the granitic stones from the Minho.
And so now on the screen now, I hope you can all see it. This is Boa Vista. This is our Oratorio terrace. And this is really one of the most iconic terraces in the Douro region. These are, really 100-year-old plants. And these terraces were, ironically, these are the new terraces at Boa Vista, because the old terraces, which you can see if you look to the left of these terraces, you see the older ones, which are now given over to olive trees. This is where previously the vines were planted. And when phylloxera hit here, it was quite late. We were, as usual, at the end of the pandemic, the phylloxera pandemic, and so there was already the discovery that we could avoid the problem by planting American rootstock and grafting European vines onto that. But at the same time, people were still very, very superstitious here, so they never planted in the same places the old vines had died in. And so these old terraces to the left are now called mortorios, so mortuaries, and this is where the old vines died of phylloxera. And the new terraces, to your right, which are now no longer very new, and this is like late 19th century, were built by hand. Incredible to think so, because looking at this photo, you can't really see the scale of it, but some of these terraces are 9 meters tall. And it's really, really incredible. And just like Pepe, we have to use horses. We don't own horses, so we have to do, we're a bit of fake news. We do a little rental horse twice a year. And the horses come in and help us do the work that needs to be done. But it really is a very, very difficult access. And, there are a couple of people from amongst you guys, from Kindred, who have actually been to Boa Vista and will, I hope, sign on the bottom line when I say that it is really a breathtaking sight. So this is where we get one of our single vineyard wines from Boa Vista, which is the Oratorio. And the lower terraces we also use in Boa Vista Reserva. All of the Boa Vista wines, and actually most of our wines here, apart from at Covella, are blends. Portugal is a blending country. So monovarietals really have never been a thing here. The only really sort of historical monovarietal I can think of is Arinto from Brussels, and maybe Alvarinho.
And the Moscatel.
And the Moscatel of Setúbal, of course, which is a fortified, so it's a little different. But really, Portugal is not big on monovarietals. It's a real blending country. And so we believe here at Lima Smith that all of our top wines should be blends. So we also do monovarietals. From Boa Vista, we do it. This year, we're going to launch a Touriga Nacional, a Tinto Cão, Donzelinho Tinto, and Alicante Boucher. But we do these in very small editions, and they're not considered to be our top wines. So we really consider the top wines to be the blends. And that here on this photo, we're aided, of course, here because this is all field blend. So on these terraces, we can have maybe up to 27 to 30 different varietals all mixed together. We're in the process of trying to identify what we have here, because this, of course, is our treasure. We obviously want to preserve this as much as we can, because it doesn't produce very much, but it produces really, really great quality. And part of the secret, of course, is the mixture of vines that we have here. So we started last year. I hired some guys from the former, what we call the House of the Douro, which used to be the institute that really controlled the Douro region. And these guys are all around 70, and they're what we call classifiers. So they can identify the vines, the type of vine it is, just by looking at them. So you can only do this as a very short window of opportunity. It's after veraison and before harvest. So you have to go in those couple months and really try and identify as much as you can. And so I went out last year with one of the guys, and we took 2 terraces. And we left at 8:30 and got back at midday, very, very hot. And on these 2 terraces, we'd identified 27 different varieties. So it really is, this is the riches, these are the riches of the Douro. And this is what you can taste really when you taste our Boa Vista wines. They're all blends, apart from these 2 or 3 different monovarietals that we make every year. And we change them around. We rotate through the different single varietal plantations that we have, which are more recent. And even the floor that Rui was showing you before, even this is a simpler wine, but it's still a blend. This is a blend of the 6 main port grapes. So you have Touriga Nacional, Touriga Franca, Tinto Cão, Amarela, Barroca, and Tinto Roriz, which will be Tempranillo in Spain. And even that, this is our sort of base level wine for Tessaderas, even that is a blend. What we've done here to try and keep it a little lower in price is we don't put it into barrel. So it's done in steel, and it keeps it fresh and fruity and gives you really an idea of what the Douro can do without being very, very heavy, because the Douro wines over the last few years have gained notoriety, but I think they've also put on weight. And so we've been trying really the last few years to reverse that trend and go back towards a more elegant, fruity, balanced style. And I think that's what we've managed to do here with all of our Douro wines. We're very pleased about that. We tend to shy away from, over extraction and heavy barrel use. So anyway, so this is, sort of a snapshot of the Douro for you. And I really hope that once this horrible virus has passed, that more of you can come and see us, and we will be here waiting for you. So I'm going to pass you back over to Rui. Just going to pass you back over to Rui now for the Tawny, the port.
You can really see why Boa Vista's price comes into play with just this picture. If somebody says those wines are a little more expensive, you can see the labor that's gone into it with just this actual landscape is amazing.
Yeah, I think it's all work by hand, and there's no way we can mechanize any of it. Everything is done by hand and foot.
So for finishing, we choose Tessaderas port. It's a tawny style. So in the port wines, we have 2 styles: the red ones, the rubies, normally aged in big vats or stainless steel tanks. And the Tawnies, the more golden ones, normally aged in small pipas, so being a pipa, a 550-liter cask. And this is a non-vintage, so it's a blend of different vintages. And this is a single Quinta Tawny Reserve, being reserve and upscale, like a red wine. When it's called reserve, means it says is a wine of a little better quality. And being Tesoreiras a small property, and we are aiming, of course, for every year to produce a vintage or an LBV, a late bottle vintage. We don't have so many choices in terms of vinifications, like do the big houses, where they are normally focused much more on ports than on table wines. So here we use actually vintage or LBV grape varieties, young and the old vines. We ferment everything as a co-fermentation in the lagar, so foot trodden to get a better extraction. We use high quality aguardente, so the spirit, and then we let it age in this pipas. So tasting it, and because of the complexity of this port, and I think of all ports, we hate to have it in this left hand for me, the little port wine glass. Normally we drink it in a white wine glass, or if we could, in a red wine glass. That's because, of course, we like port wine, but first thing is that if a wine has complexity, it's not a big sense to put it in a small glass. So here you'll be losing most of the complexity, this little freshness and all the spices coming through if you compare it in a big glass like this. And second, and this is important for Kindred, because we want you to import more. And for all guys that sell wine, if you drink port wine out of the bigger glass, we'll drink more wine. So actually at the end, we will send much more bottles. And that's also
You will sell more bottles, which is great.
The end of this wine game. And you can't see it now, but I've got this port actually chilled. And normally I see ports lying on the bar next to gin and whiskey. And it's okay for me because you see the labels. But the big problem is that when you order a port wine glass, they don't put it on the rocks, like for instance, with this gin or the whiskey. So it's normally served out at room temperature, which normally has been 20, 22, if it's hot, 26 or 28. So in a small glass, hot port, no one will drink it. No one will like it. So even with Tawnies or vintages or particular port, as with Muscatel you just showed us at the beginning, the ideal temperature would be maximum 16. So
61. That's in Fahrenheit, that's 61.
61, okay. So at my home, the port is always in the fridge. So I've got no excuses not to drink it every day if I want it. The second good thing about the Tawny compared to a Ruby, an LBV or a vintage is that after you open the bottle, you can have it open up to 2 months. So it's been oxidized in our cellars. This is a blend that has approximately 10 years. So if you have the bottle open for 1 to 2 months, it won't ruin the product. The product can live. If you do it with the same thing with an LBV or a vintage that are more reductive, that age in the bottle, after 2 to 3 days, like a normal red wine or white wine, you see that the wine will lose quality. So in terms of serving or having a suggestion by the glass, it makes much more sense to use a Tawny than to use a vintage or an LBV. So we say, cheers, saúde, to you. Of course, with the single estate Quinta Tesoreiras Tawny Reserve. Saúde.
Thank you, Rui. I want to jump back to Pepe just for a moment to take us through one of his wines as well. Pepe, you're on mute right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, thank you, Tony and Rui, for sharing. It was wonderful to travel to you. And what amazing terraces. Please count on me if I can come give you a hand with our horses to plow them anytime. It would be a big pleasure to cross the peninsula. It looks amazing and cannot wait to taste your wines. We chose with Nuria one wine to finish. I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to be very brief. But this is maybe one of our signature wines here, and it's called De Nit, at night in Catalan. It's the 2017 vintage. And just so you understand the key points of this sparkling wine, you can see how subtle the rosé color is. It's become a signature in Spain because it's very, very pale rosé. It was the first Spanish sparkling to be so pale. That's because it became a little bit iconic. No, vintage date. So it's set 2017. In Raventós y Blanc, we are committed to the highest winemaking requirements in sparkling wine. Maybe on the planet, right? As far as my knowledge, it's all is organic and biodynamic certified. Vintage date, every single of our sparkling bottles. Minimum it's 18 months on the lease. We only commit and work with indigenous grape varieties, and more important, we're bringing back this live ecosystem, this farm ecosystem into sparkling wine. No? Why we do this? Because our valley was covered by the ocean for 3 million years in the Miocene, in the mid-Miocene, such as sherry in the Peninsula Iberica. Our soils, I am very jealous you have a granite and schist to play. In our case, it's limestone that enables us to have very low pH wines, but it's limestone with an immense quantity of diatomeas, fossilized maritime life. Because Conca d'Anoia, the DO that we are working with the government to create, Conca d'Anoia, Valley of the River Anoia, is the geological estuary where the ocean met the rivers. So there's a lot of life fossilized in the limestone. When you taste the sparkling wines from Raventós, and in the future, more wines sparkling from Conca d'Anoia, you can feel a hint of salinity. That's the way we like to call or express our minerality in the area. And so as much of the sparkling wine in the world are more fruit-driven, Raventós is catching the attention because it's very strong mineral-driven with really evident salinity, iodine, low tide types of notes. No? To finish, we make 4 different cuvées. The Denit and the Blanc de Blancs, which is our most known sparkling. I don't know if you can see with me. Those come from the lowest vineyards in the property where we have about 1 meter of clay. How much is 1 meter, Rick, in American? How you say? Nuria, can you help me?
A little more than 3 feet.
Okay, thank you. So a little more than 3 feet of clay on top of the limestone. So clay retains water, drop water to the plant, and allows us to arrive to a very healthy ripening moment. It's a little bit the Burgundy approach of the muscle, the roundness, the fruit weight that the clay gives in the Merceau, for example, cru, right? Compared to Chassagne, which is a slope and more precise and more cutting edge, no, more linear. That's where we make, for example, our De La Finca, which is our cru selection of the soils. No? So just to give you a brief insight, the way that we work from a soil approach, expressing this idea of minerality that comes from the limestone, but then I would say surrounded or complemented by clay, depending on the different of the vineyards where we're working.
Thank you, Pepe. I know that Emily put together a sell sheet of the wines that are currently carried by Woodberry in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just share that.
Sure. So let me pull that up. So I know a lot of people were asking too about spelling of everything. So this will help. Hopefully. I know the text might be a little small. For those of you who are in the industry, these are wholesale prices. This is the prices from Woodberry. If you would like a copy of this, please email your sales rep. They will send it to you. I know this is probably a little small on everybody's screen. But myself, your sales rep, Rick, and Nuria, we're all great resources to get you this type of information and what you need as far as information about the properties, the wines, the winemakers, anything that you need, we can get that to you. And I guess I also wanted to say, first of all, just a huge thank you to all of our amazing presenters. This is a fantastic little meeting of the minds here. And if everybody wants to go ahead, unmute yourselves, turn your videos back on, please say hi. If you have any questions, please throw them out. I know we're coming up a little bit on time, so if you have to go, totally understand. But if you want to stick around for the next 5 or 10 minutes, please go ahead, turn those videos on, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Hey, Tony, could you explain the history of Covella for us? Just a little bit more of the history and some of the dramatic nature of the property.
Tony, you're muted right now.
Really shows you how old the place is. So this is our ruin. So this was the original house here at Covella. And let me just disconnect here so I don't knock any glasses over. So you can see this is all from the late 16th century. So this was the time in Portugal when the discoveries, so the navigation discoveries were happening. And this, this property really dates from then. Originally, this place was planted with the stuff that they brought back from the Americas. So potatoes and corn, believe it or not. And that's what this region is really, really good at. They've always planted wine. They've always planted vines. But in fact, in commercial terms, that's what was planted here. And as very often in the Vineyard region, you had the vines would be planted around the fields of other crops. So like the corn and the potatoes. And it would give people shade, and it would be people would make their own wine, but it wasn't made to be sold. But Covella started to become a commercial wine property in the 1980s when it was planted. And as I told you earlier on, it used to have a mix of native grapes and international varietals. And we've sort of reversed that trend. So now what you can see down here, this is all now Avesso in front of you. And on the other side of the valley, on the top of the valley is a cork oak forest where we have a lot of wild boars. So you don't want to run into any of them. But it is quite a historic property. So it used to belong also to a Portuguese film director. He was one of the most famous film directors in Europe. He was Manuel de Oliveira. The movies are all 3.5, 4 hours long. I don't necessarily recommend them unless you're really into European cinema. But he was a really ingenious guy, and he was a Renaissance man. And he did a lot of architectural work here. So he redesigned the center of the property, which is further down beyond the chapel, which is where we have the winery and the visiting center and our kitchens, very important. And he also made an aqueduct, which brings the water around it's a couple of miles actually, from around the other side of the valley, and it brings it through a stone aqueduct all the way here. Some of it is underground, some of it is built against the walls. So it's quite amazing. So it's, this is a very, very charming place. And as I said, I hope once this virus is gone, this accursed virus is gone, then you will all be able to come and see us.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Pepe, I'll ask one for Pepe and then one to Tony. One thing that my wife and I were blown away at was this tree that we, I'll call it art because I really don't know what art is, so it's probably art. But this thing, will you tell us the story about what that is, Pepe?
Yeah, you see that in the logo of our bottles, there is this oak tree. So it's our logo is this 500-year-old. I'm waiting here for the image to see if you can. Yeah. Okay. So it's an oak tree, and it's 500-year-old. I'm going to try to show you right here. If you can hear me, let me know. This image from. So this is our farm in Penedès, from where we're talking today, and right in the middle of this farm is this oak tree that Michael is showing you, which is a 500-year-old tree, and it's the symbol that my family has been farming in the area for more than 21 generations today. So now I'm also moving here, and I don't know if you can see, Michael, what it has become. So you see at the end of the image, all the children of the tree have creating like a forest.
Oh, really?
Like a forest around that old tree that is the testimony. Right. Is the sons of the same tree, so from acorns of the same tree. Isn't that beautiful?
It is. It really is. Bravo.
Very natural. And you can see the white little house on top. That's where my family is living, and where we spend these confinement times.
It's really breathtaking there. I can't wait to visit Tony. Tony, I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
You started your speech by mentioning that you're a Brit, and you kind of moved on from there. If you could talk a little bit about, I think that's important actually.
One, so I will do that tomorrow.
Whoever's talking right now, hello. I think it's important because when I was in Glasgow, I had this incredible Indian food, and I don't know if that has anything to do with what you're saying, but I think that there's a history between England and Portugal and India, and I think it's something that goes back hundreds of years. And there's a reason why, you know, you're in Portugal and you guys love that stuff.
Yeah, well, I didn't come via India. I didn't, but I do love Indian food. It's true. But yeah, I mean, the Anglo-Portuguese alliance is really, really, really old. It's actually, I think, it's the oldest existing treaty actually in Europe. And it started in the 14th century, no, the 13th century, the 14th century, when John of Gaunt's daughter married the King of Portugal, John I. So it's really never been broken, and it was even invoked. It was even invoked during the Malvinas, the Falklands crisis, Falklands War. It was invoked by the Brits. And the Portuguese respected it and gave them the use of the Azores base in the mid-Atlantic. So yes, it's a very, very old, old alliance. And India, I guess we both countries had interests there. Portugal was there first, of course. Portugal was everywhere first. Portugal and Spain just basically divided up the world in the 15th and 16th centuries. The Portuguese were all over the place, and so they left their mark in several places in Asia, and they stayed longest in Macau. But in India, they were in Goa until 1961, 62. So it was a really long time. It was 300, 400 years. And so yeah, there is this link between Britain and Portugal and India. Yes, and here in Portugal also, the Indian food is really, really good. But it's Goan. It's from Goa normally, whereas in the UK it's normally Bengali.
The food in Portugal is incredible, and a lot has to do with the influences from the incredible talents of the shipping, the use of boats, for so many years, and so many flavors and so much unique, flavors are in Portugal and inspired by the world.
The Portuguese really did bring an awful lot of things back with them from these trips. And, Portugal is a small country, and it was, Spain is a big country. Portugal is sort of small, and it's on the edge of Europe. And so the only option it had really was to open itself to the world. And it did that with a vengeance. And it really did bring an awful lot of things back with it. And you'll see a lot of influence of Asian architecture was blended into Portuguese architecture and the cuisine, but not the wines. Wines definitely from here, and they went out from here, and they're still going out from here.
Thank you, Tony.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Pepe or Tony or Nuria or Rui here? Just while we have them here, we're coming up on 10 minutes over, so if just want to get those questions in under the wire. Wow, I think we're good.
Thank you, Emily. You did a great job.
Thanks. And everybody,
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters. Thank you for taking the time out of your days, especially with the technology and the time change and everything. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great seeing everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Adeu.